Welcome back. If you're just joining us, go watch part 1 right now, because you need to know how a broke Nigerian girl in Seoul ended up kissing the most dangerous man in Korea on a cliff in Jeju Island. For those who are caught up, buckle up because part 2 is where things get dark, bloody, and absolutely insane. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button because part 3 is coming and trust me, you'll want notifications turned on. Now, let's get back into the story. I woke up to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the sound of waves crashing against rocks below. For a moment, just a beautiful, peaceful moment, I forgot where I was. Forgot everything that had happened. Then I felt the weight of an arm across my waist, and reality came flooding back. Jin-hyuk, the Korean Mafia boss I was fake engaged to, who I'd just slept with. Oh God. Oh God. What have I done? I tried to slip out of bed quietly, but his arm tightened around me, pulling me back against his chest. His skin was warm, and I could feel the raised texture of the tattoo on his ribs, that serpent wrapped around a sword that I'd traced with my fingers last night in the darkness. "Don't," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Don't run from this, Mary." Jin-hyuk, this was a mistake. I started, but he spun me around to face him. In the morning light, with his hair messy and his guard completely down, he looked almost innocent. Almost. The tattoos crawling up his neck and the scars on his chest told a different story. No. His dark eyes were intense, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. This was the first real thing that's happened to me in 10 years. Don't call it a mistake. "What are we doing?" I whispered, my hand unconsciously going to his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "I don't know." He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm. "But I know I don't want to stop." Before I could respond, before I could think about how completely insane this all was, his phone rang. The change was instant. His expression hardened, his body going tense. He answered in rapid Korean, his voice cold and professional.
"The businessman."
"The killer. The monster." I understood enough to catch words like finished, eliminated, confirmed. After he hung up, he sat up, running a hand through his hair. The morning intimacy was gone, replaced by something darker. "It's done," he said flatly. "What's done?" He turned to look at me, and his eyes were empty again.
"Cold."
"The people who threatened you. They won't be threatening anyone ever again." My stomach clenched. What does that mean exactly? It means I sent a message. 3 bodies were found in Incheon this morning, rivals from the Chinese syndicate who thought targeting you would weaken me. He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. They were wrong. I should have been horrified. Should have run screaming. But instead, I asked, Did you kill them yourself?"
"No."
I had Minjun handle it, but I gave very specific instructions about how it should be done. He looked at me, studying my reaction. "Does that frighten you?" "Yes," I admitted. "But not in the way you think." "What way, then?" "It frightens me that I'm not more frightened. That part of me feels safe. Protected." I pulled the sheet around myself, suddenly feeling exposed. What does that say about me? Jin-hyuk's expression softened slightly. "It says you're a survivor. That you understand the world isn't black and white." He stood, unself-conscious in his nakedness, and I could see all his scars now in the daylight. Bullet wound on his shoulder. Knife scar across his ribs. Burn mark on his back.
"Get dressed."
"We need to go back to Seoul."
"Why?"
"I thought we were hiding here." We were. But now the threat's been eliminated, and we need to be seen. Together. Make this engagement real, in everyone's eyes. He pulled on black pants, and I watched the muscles in his back shift under scarred skin. "Besides, you have a fitting this afternoon." "A fitting?" He turned, a slight smile on his lips. "For your engagement ring. Can't have my fiancé walking around without proper jewelry." Subscribe now if you haven't already. This is getting crazy. The helicopter ride back to Seoul felt different in daylight. Less urgent, but somehow more ominous. Jin-hyuk spent most of the flight on his phone, speaking in Korean, Japanese, and Mandarin. Conducting business. Running an empire. I watched Seoul grow larger as we approached, the Han River snaking through it like a silver dragon. Somewhere down there, 3 bodies were being discovered. 3 men who'd threatened me were dead because of Jin-hyuk's orders. I should have felt guilty. I didn't. God help me, I didn't. We landed on the roof of one of Jin-hyuk's buildings, a sleek high-rise in Gangnam that housed legitimate businesses. At least, that's what he called them. Import-export companies, real estate holdings, restaurants and hotels. All of them probably fronts for money laundering, but I was learning not to ask too many questions. A woman in an elegant suit was waiting as we stepped off the helicopter. She was Korean, probably in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper smile. Choi-sasa. She bowed to Jin-hyuk, then turned to me. And you must be Miss Okonkwo. I'm Kim Mi-sun, Mr. Choi's personal attorney and advisor. Nice to meet you, I said, shaking her hand. The contracts are ready for your review, she said to Jin-hyuk, then to me. I'll need about an hour of your time to go over the terms of your engagement agreement.
Right.
The business arrangement. Because that's what this was supposed to be. Except it hadn't felt like business last night. I'll leave you two to handle the details, Jin-hyuk said, his hand briefly touching the small of my back. I have a meeting with the Park family. The Parks? I asked, alarmed. Seo-yeon's family?
Yes.
They're unhappy about our engagement announcement. His smile was cold. I'm going to make them more unhappy. He left, and I was alone with attorney Kim. She led me to a conference room with a view of Seoul that made my vertigo kick in. The contract she placed in front of me was thick, at least 50 pages of legal language in both Korean and English. Don't worry, she said, noting my expression. I'll explain everything. For the next hour, she walked me through it all. The terms were generous, extremely generous. 6 months of engagement. Public appearances as required. Living arrangements in one of Jin-hyuk's properties. A monthly allowance that was more than I'd made in a year. And at the end, a lump sum payment of 500 million won. About 400,000 US dollars. Enough to change my life completely. There are also protection clauses, attorney Kim continued. You'll have 24/7 security. Any threats against you will be handled by Mr. Choi's organization. And if you're harmed in any way during the contract period, your family will receive 10 times the agreed amount. That's thorough. Mr. Choi is very protective of what's his. She smiled slightly. Even when it's temporary. Can I ask you something? I said. Off the record? She nodded. Has he ever done this before? Fake engagement, I mean?
No.
In fact, I've worked for the Choi family for 15 years, and I've never seen Jin-hyuk SSI show interest in anyone. Not like this. She leaned forward slightly. Between you and me, Miss Okonkwo, I don't think this is as fake as he's pretending it is. My heart did something complicated in my chest. One more thing, attorney Kim said, pulling out another document. This is a separate agreement. Optional, but recommended. It's an NDA, non-disclosure. Anything you see or hear during your time with Mr. Choi remains confidential. Forever. What happens if I break it? Her smile turned glacial. Let's just say the financial penalties would be severe. And Mr. Choi has very good lawyers. The threat was subtle but clear. I'd be entering a world where silence was currency and secrets were weapons. I signed everything. What choice did I have? I was already in too deep. After the contract signing, I was taken to a luxury apartment in Cheongdam-dong, one of Seoul's most expensive neighborhoods. The apartment was mine for the duration of our engagement. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen bigger than my old apartment, and a view that made me dizzy. A stylist team arrived immediately. They transformed my small closet into a designer showroom. Chanel, Dior, Hermès, brands I'd only ever seen in magazines. Shoes that cost more than my university tuition. Handbags worth thousands of dollars. Mr. Choi was very specific about your style, the head stylist said, a fashionable Korean woman named Park Ji-won. He said to emphasize your natural beauty, your curves, your skin tone. Make you unforgettable. She held up a deep burgundy dress. This for tonight. Tonight? The engagement dinner. With both families. My blood ran cold. Both families? As in his family and the Parks. Yes. Ji-won smiled sympathetically. Don't worry. You'll be stunning. And you'll have Mr. Choi by your side. Somehow, that didn't make me feel better. By the time Jin-hyuk arrived to pick me up that evening, I'd been plucked, painted, and polished within an inch of my life. The burgundy dress hugged every curve, the color making my dark skin glow. My braids had been restyled into an elegant updo with gold accessories. I wore the diamond studs Jin-hyuk had sent over. A preview, the note had said. When he saw me, he stopped in the doorway of my new apartment. "Mary," he breathed. He looked devastating in a charcoal three-piece suit, his tattoos mostly hidden except for the ones peeking above his collar. His hair was styled perfectly, and he wore a watch that probably cost more than a car. "You clean up nice yourself," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He crossed the room, pulled a small box from his pocket. "Before we go, there's this." Inside was a ring that made my breath catch. A massive cushion-cut diamond, at least 5 carats, surrounded by smaller diamonds in a platinum setting. It was ostentatious and beautiful and absolutely terrifying in its expense. "Jin-hyuk, this is yours." He took my left hand, slid the ring onto my finger. Perfect fit. For the next 6 months, at least. The weight of it felt significant. Final. "How much did this cost?" I whispered. "Does it matter?" His thumb traced the ring on my finger. "You're mine now, Mary. Everyone needs to know it." The possessiveness in his voice should have annoyed me. It didn't. "Are you ready?" he asked.
No.
"But let's go anyway." The restaurant was in Gangnam, exclusive, requiring reservations months in advance, the kind of place where celebrities and politicians dined in private rooms. We were led to the largest private room, and my stomach dropped when I saw who was waiting. On one side, an older Korean man with cold eyes and expensive suit. 2 younger men flanking him, both built like fighters. The Park family. On the other side, an elegant Korean woman in her 60s, dignified and beautiful. 2 more men, older, with the same cold eyes as Jin-hyuk. The Choi family. And in the middle, Park Seo-yeon, looking like a K-drama villain in a white designer dress that probably cost more than my new apartment's monthly rent. Jin-hyuk's hand tightened on mine as we entered. "Omoni," he said, bowing to the older woman. "I'd like you to meet Mary Okonkwo, my fiancé." The silence that followed could have cut steel. Jin-hyuk's mother, because of course that's who she was, looked at me with eyes that missed nothing. I saw her take in my dark skin, my curves, my foreign features. Calculating. Assessing. Then she smiled. "Welcome, Mary SSI," she said in perfect English. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." The dinner that followed was the most uncomfortable 2 hours of my life. Park Seo-yeon's father, Park Hyun-woo, barely acknowledged my existence, speaking only to Jin-hyuk in formal Korean I could barely follow. But I caught enough to understand he was pissed. The word arrangement came up multiple times. So did insult and disrespect. Seo-yeon herself was more subtle. She smiled at me, asked polite questions about Nigeria, complimented my dress. But her eyes were calculating, cold. "It's so romantic," she said in English, her accent perfect and precise. "A chance meeting at a nightclub. Love at first sight. Love at first slap, actually," Jin-hyuk said smoothly, his hand finding mine under the table. "Mary has a way of making impressions." His mother's eyebrow raised slightly. "A slap?" "I was being an ass," Jin-hyuk continued, his voice casual but his grip on my hand tightening. "She put me in my place. I never met anyone so fearless." One of the older Choi men, Jin-hyuk's uncle, I gathered, spoke in rapid Korean. I caught the words unsuitable and embarrassment. Jin-hyuk's response was sharp and cold. I didn't understand all of it, but the message was clear. "She's mine. Accept it or don't. I don't care." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Jin-hyuk, his mother said softly, but there was steel underneath. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Omoni. I'm marrying Mary. The engagement will last as long as it lasts. That's final. Park Hyun-woo's face turned red. He said something harsh in Korean, and Jin-hyuk's entire demeanor changed. He stood slowly, his hand releasing mine. When he spoke, his voice was so cold it made the air itself seem to freeze. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. The threat. The absolute finality. Park Hyun-woo stood too, his face purple with rage. He said something that made Seo-yeon gasp. Then Jin-hyuk smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Say that again, he said in English deliberately. I want my fiancée to understand the insult you just paid her. The room went silent. You called her a... Jin-hyuk's jaw clenched. You used a racial slur. About the woman I'm going to marry. Oh God. Mr. Park, I started trying to defuse the situation, but Jin-hyuk's hand came up, stopping me. No, Mary. He needs to learn. Jin-hyuk walked around the table slowly, deliberately. His bodyguards, I hadn't even noticed them come in, moved to block the exits. Do you know what I do to people who insult what's mine? Park Hyun-woo's bravado faltered. Jin-hyuk SSI. I had a man's tongue cut out last month for less. Jin-hyuk's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. What do you think I should do to someone who insults my future wife? Jin-hyuk, his mother said sharply. That's enough. But he wasn't listening. He was in front of Park Hyun-woo now, looming over him. Apologize to her, Jin-hyuk said softly. Now. I will not. Jin-hyuk moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was standing there, the next he had Park Hyun-woo's wrist in his hand, bending it at an unnatural angle. The older man cried out in pain. I said, apologize to my fiancé. Jin-hyuk. I stood up, my heart racing. Stop, please. He looked at me then, and his eyes were empty.
Dead.
The monster I'd slapped in that club was fully present now. But when he saw my face, saw my fear, not of Park Hyun-woo, but of him, something shifted. He released the man's wrist. We're leaving, he said, his voice still cold. Mary, get your coat. I didn't argue. I grabbed my clutch and followed him out, very aware of the shocked silence we left behind. In the car, Jin-hyuk was silent. Absolutely silent. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. His hands were fisted on his knees. Jin-hyuk, I started. Don't. His voice was harsh. Don't tell me I overreacted. Don't tell me I should have controlled myself. That man used a word I won't even repeat about you, and you want me to just. I was going to say thank you, I said quietly. He turned to look at me, surprised. No one's ever defended me like that. I continued. In 8 months in Korea, I've been called names, been discriminated against, been made to feel less than human. And no one, not one person, ever stood up for me. I reached over, took his clenched fist in my hand. So, thank you, even if you scared the hell out of me. His fist slowly unclenched, his fingers threading through mine. I scared you, he said flatly. Yes. I'm sorry. Don't be. I needed to see that side of you. The real you. I squeezed his hand. I'm choosing to be with you, Jin-hyuk. All of you. The man who saves my jollof rice and the man who breaks fingers to defend my honor. He pulled me across the seat, into his arms. You're insane, he murmured against my hair. Says the Mafia boss who's fake engaged to a girl who slapped him. He laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made his whole body shake. Not feeling very fake anymore, he admitted. No, I agreed. It's really not. We went back to his penthouse, the one where this had all started. Where he'd first told me about his offer. Where I'd first started falling into this beautiful, dangerous insanity. I need to show you something, he said once we were inside. He led me through the penthouse to a door I hadn't noticed before. It required a fingerprint scan to open. Inside was an office. But not just any office. One wall was covered in screens showing security feeds. Dozens of them. Buildings, streets, ports, warehouses. His empire, displayed in real time. Another wall had files. Physical files, organized by color-coded labels I couldn't read. And on the desk, guns. At least 5 of them, all different types. This is who I am, Jin-hyuk said quietly. This is what I do. I run an organization that controls half of Seoul's underground economy. Drugs, weapons, protection, gambling. If it's illegal and profitable, I have a hand in it. He picked up one of the guns, a sleek black pistol, and I recognized it as a Glock. I've killed 17 men with my own hands. 19 if you count blood loss. He set the gun down. I've ordered the deaths of dozens more. I've hurt people, ruined lives, destroyed families. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because you need to know exactly what you're getting into. This isn't a fairy tale, Mary. I'm not a prince. I'm a monster who runs a criminal empire, and being with me, fake or real, makes you complicit. He turned to face me fully. If you want out, tell me now. I'll pay you for the time you've given me, set you up with enough money to start over anywhere in the world, and you'll never hear from me again. But if you choose to stay, there's no going back. You'll be part of this world. Forever. I looked around the room. At the screens showing his operations. At the files documenting God knows what crimes. At the guns that had probably ended lives. Then I looked at him. At the man who'd saved my jollof rice. Who'd defended my honor with violence. Who looked at me like I was the only real thing in his carefully constructed world of lies and power. I'm staying, I said. Mary, I'm staying, I repeated, moving closer to him. Not because of the money. Not because I'm trapped. But because when I'm with you, I feel seen. For the first time in my life, someone sees me, not my skin color, not my accent, not my struggles. You see Mary. And I see you too. All of you. I took the gun from his hand, set it back on the desk. You're a monster, I said softly. But you're my monster. And I'm choosing you. All of you. He kissed me then, and it was different from before. Desperate. Claiming. Like he was trying to pour everything he couldn't say into that kiss. I don't deserve you, he murmured against my lips. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Jin-hyuk was right. Being seen together in public made our engagement real, in everyone's eyes. We attended charity galas, business dinners, art gallery openings. Everywhere we went, people stared, whispered. Some were curious, some were judgmental, some were outright racist. But Jin-hyuk's hand never left the small of my back. His message was clear: touch her and die. I moved into his penthouse officially. Gave up my tiny Itaewon apartment, though Jin-hyuk kept paying the rent, just in case. We fell into a routine that felt disturbingly domestic for 2 people engaged in a business arrangement that was becoming less business-like every day. He taught me about his world. Showed me the legitimate businesses he ran, hotels, restaurants, import companies. Explained how money laundering worked, how he moved products through ports without detection, how he kept politicians and police in his pocket. You're making me an accessory, I pointed out one night as he explained a particularly complex smuggling operation. Yes, he agreed. Is that a problem? It should have been. God, it should have been. No, I admitted. I think there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with both of us, he said, pulling me into his lap. But at least we're wrong together. I also learned about the violence. Not from him directly, he tried to shield me from that. But I wasn't stupid. I noticed when he came home late with blood on his knuckles. When he took phone calls in Japanese that made his expression go cold and dead. When his men reported problems handled, in voices that made it clear exactly how those problems had been resolved. One night, I woke up to find his side of the bed empty. I found him in his office, staring at security footage of what looked like a warehouse. Jin-hyuk. He didn't turn around. Go back to bed, Mary. What happened? Nothing you need to worry about. I moved closer, looked at the screen. There was blood on the warehouse floor. A lot of blood. Did you?
No. Mignon handed it. His voice was flat.
A rival family tried to move product through our territory without permission. We sent a message. How many?
4.
All soldiers, no civilians. He said it so casually. For lives ended just like that. Do you ever regret it? I asked. The violence? He finally turned to look at me.
No.
Should I? I don't know. Maybe. This is who I am, Mary. This is what I do. I don't regret protecting what's mine, and I don't feel guilty about eliminating threats. He stood, moved closer to me. Does that horrify you? It should. But it doesn't. I thought about it.
Really thought about it.
No, I admitted. I think I'm more horrified by the fact that I understand. That part of me knows you're doing what you have to do to survive in your world. You're adapting, he said almost proudly. Faster than I expected. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. About 5 weeks into our arrangement, things started to go wrong. It started small. A black car following us that wasn't one of Jin-hyuk's. Strange hang-up calls to my phone. Messages on social media from accounts that disappeared immediately after sending threats. Jin-hyuk doubled my security. Tripled it. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched when he thought I wasn't looking. What's going on? I asked one morning over breakfast. Nothing. Jin-hyuk, don't lie to me. I'm not a child. He set down his coffee, his expression grim. The Parks aren't accepting the engagement. They're escalating. Escalating how? Putting pressure on my business partners. Threatening my supply chains. Making alliances with families in China and Japan. He ran a hand through his hair. They wanted to break off our engagement and marry Seo-yeon. They think if they make things difficult enough, I'll cave. Will you? His eyes snapped to mine, fierce and possessive. Never. Even if it costs you your empire? Even then. He reached across the table, took my hand. I told you, Mary. You're mine. That's not negotiable. I should have been happy. Flattered. Swept off my feet by his declaration. Instead, I felt a chill run down my spine. Jin-hyuk, I'm not worth starting a war over. Yes, you are. His voice was absolute. Final. And it's not your choice anymore. It's done. The attack came on a Thursday. We were leaving a restaurant in Itaewon, one of Jin-hyuk's legitimate businesses, when it happened. 3 black SUVs appeared out of nowhere, blocking our car in. Men in masks poured out. At least a dozen of them, with guns. Get down. Jin-hyuk shoved me to the floor of the car as the first shots rang out. The windows were bulletproof, I learned that later, but the sound was deafening. Glass spiderwebbed, but didn't shatter. Our driver, one of Jin-hyuk's men, returned fire through a slot in the partition. Jin-hyuk was on his phone, shouting in Korean. How long? He demanded. Then, faster. More gunfire. I heard screams from the street. Innocent people caught in the crossfire. Stay down, Jin-hyuk ordered, his body covering mine protectively. What's happening? The Parks. Making their statement. The gunfire stopped suddenly. I heard shouting, then the sound of screeching tires. They're leaving, our driver said in Korean. Backup is 2 minutes out. Jin-hyuk pulled me up, his hands running over me frantically. Are you hurt? Mary, look at me. Are you hurt? But I was shaking so hard I could barely speak. He pulled me into his arms, and I felt his heart racing against my chest. I'm sorry, he whispered into my hair. I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming.
Jin-hyuk, I'm okay.
We're okay.
But we weren't okay.
Because this wasn't a game anymore. This wasn't a fake engagement or a business arrangement or even a dangerous romance. This was war. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that button now because part 3 is going to be explosive, literally. Things are about to get bloody. Jin-hyuk took me back to the penthouse and immediately called an emergency meeting. Within an hour, his office was filled with men, his inner circle. I recognized Min-jun, the British guy Christopher, and about 6 others I'd seen around but never been introduced to. They spoke in rapid Korean, their voices overlapping. I caught words like retaliation, message, and war. Enough, Jin-hyuk said finally, his voice cutting through the chaos.
English.
Mary deserves to understand what's happening. The men looked at me, some with respect, some with resentment, all with surprise. The Parks attacked us in broad daylight, Jin-hyuk continued. In public. With civilians present. That's a violation of every code we operate under. They're desperate, Min-jun said. The engagement has made you look weak to the old families. Like you can be controlled by a woman. I stiffened, but Jin-hyuk's hand found mine under the table. Then we remind them exactly how much control I have, Jin-hyuk said coldly. We hit 3 of their operations tonight. Simultaneously. No merci. Jin-hyuk SSI, Christopher said carefully. That will escalate. I don't care. They shot at my fiancée. They could have killed her. His grip on my hand tightened painfully. That requires a response they'll never forget. What kind of response? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. Jin-hyuk looked at me, and his eyes were empty. The monster was fully present. Blood, he said simply. He left that night with his men. Kissed me goodbye like he was going to a business meeting, not a massacre. Stay in the penthouse, he ordered. Don't leave, for any reason. I've tripled the guards. Jin-hyuk, please be careful. I'm always careful. He cupped my face in his hands. I'll be back before sunrise. I promise. But he wasn't. I waited all night, pacing the penthouse floor, watching the security feeds, though they showed nothing helpful, checking my phone obsessively. At 4 a.m., news started breaking. Gang violence in Incheon. Multiple casualties in apparent organized crime incident. Police investigating warehouse fire in Bucheon. At 5 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Miss Okonkwo. A woman's voice.
Cultured.
Korean. This is Park Seo-yeon. My blood ran cold. What do you want?
To warn you.
Jin-hyuk is on his way to our family's headquarters. He thinks he's going to send a message. But we're ready for him. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. By sunrise, your fiancé will be dead. You're lying.
Am I?
Turn on the news, Mary. Watch what happens when you choose the wrong man. She hung up. I ran to the TV, turned it to a news channel. Breaking news. Standoff in Gangnam. Heavy gunfire reported. Police unable to reach the scene. They showed aerial footage from a helicopter. A warehouse surrounded by black SUVs. Gunfire visible even from that height. Jin-hyuk was in there. And I was trapped in a penthouse, helpless to do anything but watch. I grabbed my phone, called the only person I could think of. Attorney Kim? It's Mary Okonkwo. I need your help. Miss Okonkwo, it's 5 a.m. I know what time it is. Jin-hyuk is walking into a trap. I need to get to him. Absolutely not. Mr. Choi left explicit instructions. I don't care about his instructions. I was shouting now, panicked. He's going to die if someone doesn't warn him. A pause. Then, what do you know? I told her about Seo-yeon's call. Another pause, longer this time. Stay where you are, Attorney Kim said finally. I'll make some calls. But,
stay where you
are. She hung up. I couldn't just stand there. Couldn't just watch him die on live television. So, I did the stupidest thing I'd ever done. I called Seo-yeon back. Yes. She sounded amused. What do you want? I asked.
To stop this.
Oh, Mary. Sweet, naive Mary. She laughed. I want you to watch Jin-hyuk die knowing you could have saved him. That's what I want. What if I offer myself instead? Silence. What did you say?
Me.
For him. I'll come to you, break off the engagement, leave Korea forever. Just call off the attack. You do that. She sounded genuinely surprised. Sacrifice yourself for him? Yes. How romantic. Another pause. You have 30 minutes to get to the Grand Hyatt.
Présidentielle suite.
Come alone, or the deal is off and Jin-hyuk dies anyway. She hung up. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. This was insane. This was suicide. But Jin-hyuk had defended me.
Protected me.
Chosen me over his own empire. Now it was my turn to save him. Getting past Jin-hyuk's guards was harder than I expected. I had to pretend I was going to the bathroom, then slip out through the service entrance that I'd noticed weeks ago when a cleaning crew came through. I grabbed a cab, my Korean finally useful for something important, and gave the driver the address. The Grand Hyatt, where Seo-yeon was waiting, where I was probably going to die. But if my death saved Jin-hyuk, wasn't that worth it? God, Mary, when did you become the kind of person who thinks like this? I knew the answer. The moment I'd slapped him. The moment I'd chosen to stay instead of run. The moment I'd fallen in love with a monster. Because that's what this was, I realized as the cab climbed the hills toward the hotel. Love. Stupid. Dangerous. Absolutely insane love. The hotel was beautiful. All luxury and elegance. I gave Seo-yeon's name at the desk, and they directed me to the presidential suite without question. The elevator ride-up felt like riding to my own execution. The suite door was open. I walked in. Seo-yeon sat on a white couch, elegant as always, sipping champagne. But she wasn't alone. 4 men in suits stood around the room.
Armed.
Mary, she smiled. You actually came.
I'm impressed.
I'm here. Now call off the attack. Oh, I will. In a moment. She set down her champagne glass. But first, we need to have a conversation about your place in the world. My place. You're a foreign girl who seduced Korea's most powerful crime lord. Do you know how that looks? How weak it makes him appear? She stood, moved closer. You need to disappear, Mary.
Completely.
And I'm going to help you with that. That's when I noticed the plastic sheeting on the floor. Oh God. You were never going to let him go, were you? I whispered. Of course not.
Jin-hyuk dies tonight.
But first you die. And when he finds your body, what's left of it, he'll be so consumed with rage that he'll make mistakes. Fatal mistakes. She smiled. It's actually quite elegant. The men moved closer. I backed toward the door, but one of them was already blocking it. Any last words? Seo-yeon asked. I thought of Jin-hyuk. Of his smile when he talked about my jollof rice. Of his hands, so gentle despite being covered in blood. Of the way he looked at me like I was the only real thing in his carefully constructed world. Yeah, I said. You underestimated him. What? The window exploded inward. Men in black tactical gear poured in on rappelling lines. Jin-hyuk's men. I realized with a shock of relief. Gunfire erupted. I dropped to the floor, covering my head. It was over in seconds. When I looked up, 3 of Seo-yeon's guards were dead. The 4th was on his knees, held at gunpoint. And Seo-yeon herself was pressed against the wall, a gun to her head. Held by Jin-hyuk. He was covered in blood, not all of it his own, I hoped. His face was a mask of cold fury. You touched what's mine, he said softly. Then, he pulled the trigger. Part 3 coming soon. Hit subscribe and turn on all notifications because the finale is going to be insane. Like and comment if you're Team Mary and Jin-hyuk. See you in Part 3.